A reading from the book of Lamentations. Jerusalem's streets, once thronged with people, are silent now. Like a widow broken with grief, she sits alone in her mourning. She, once queen of nations, is now a slave. She sobs through the night, tears run down her cheeks. Among all her lovers, there is none to help her. All her friends are now her enemies. Why is Judah led away, a slave? Because of all the wrong she did to others, making them her slaves. Now she sits in exile, far away. There is no rest for those she persecuted have turned and conquered her. The roads to Zion mourn, no longer filled with joyous throngs who come to celebrate the temple feasts. The city gates are silent, her priests groan, her virgins have been dragged away. Bitterly she weeps. Her enemies prosper, for God has punished Jerusalem for all her many sins. Her young children are captured and taken far away as slaves. All her beauty and her majesty are gone. Her princes are like starving deer that search for pasture, helpless game too weak to keep on running from their foes.
Well, welcome everyone to the month of October. Autumn is truly making itself at home, with the leaves on the trees falling and changing colors, while we're all working on putting away our spring and summer clothes and shoes. Many parts of our country and other countries have been hit hard by Hurricane Fiona and Ian. May God have mercy. I feel for those Caribbean islands that go through so much during this time of year. I was even moved to donate to Cuba's current disaster relief. But here in New England, we have our own severe weather conditions that sometimes cripple us. But we're blessed to be mostly downwind from those devastating disasters that happened during hurricane season. Today's sermon is titled Heartfelt Lamentations. I usually try to stay clear of preaching from the Old Testament because many parts of it disturbs me and confuses me. And there are books in there that strongly support terrible things, all contrived and written by prophets as well as other human beings who made it appear that our Creator God condones murdering homosexuals, killing disobedient children in the name of God, raping women, murdering non-believers, the genocide of certain ethnic, national, racial, and religious groups. So I study and I ask myself, do I really want to teach moral guidance from any of these dark books? I don't know. But when our lectionary and my spirit match up together to say Lamentations is going to be our theme for today, I just go with it. I take it in along with the challenge of digging a little deeper for the meaning of whatever these ancient books are telling us. I stay hopeful that these hard-lived lessons may help us, postmodern believers, to know, learn, and live better lives from these heartfelt experiences and examples. Those examples from those who forecast the world before Jesus. So first off, I myself have reached 5 months into experiencing a painful season of lamenting the loss of my twin brother, Alfred, who died in a single-car rollover accident last June. I'm still struggling, hence today's dramatic sermon title. But I'll also admit that through borrowing extra research help from the online sermon writers resource, it's support I needed so that I won't get too opinionated in delivering this message. So let us begin with the definition of lamentations, which means a strong proclamation of one's own grief, a wailing song, a poem, or a passionate expression of one's sorrow from experiencing loss or death. It has been noted that Lamentations is indeed the saddest book in the Bible, made up entirely of 5 mournful songs. Jerusalem has fallen. The kingdom of Judah has burned and dissolved. And the survivors of this unbelievable tragedy are now exiled and suffering. The poet of this emotional book is unnamed, but ancient Jewish tradition from before the time of Jesus attributes this work to the prophet Jeremiah, because this book lies next to the book of Jeremiah. And he also was present when Babylon overtook the city and the temple of Jerusalem in 586 BC. That's when Jeremiah delivered a lament over the devastating death of King Josiah. The book of Lamentations was likely written shortly after Jerusalem fell. Some scholars question Jeremiah's authorship, pointing to the stylistic variations between the book of Jeremiah and Lamentations. But scholars are divided on this matter. Jeremiah did write in this genre, but the detailed writing style and thought process are in many ways very different from those that are from the book bearing Jeremiah's name. The poet who composed these songs masterfully expresses the content of his people's grief. They do it in such a way that gives a very thoughtful and tireless approach that seems to desperately cry out that the Jews have suffered great grief from A to Z. In the world they live in, all order has vanished, and chaos now rules their lives. And so on it goes with many areas of the world that we live in today. The book of Lamentations reads as a slow, solemn, and mournful piece of funeral music for the nation of Judah. It tells the horrible tales of starving mothers who cooked and cannibalized their own children in order to survive. In these passages that were read today, the author imagines the city of Jerusalem to be a beautiful princess who has become a lowly servant, then to a maiden who has become a widow who was once great among the nations. These 2 lines here in this reading express the same vivid thought in different words. But now Jerusalem weeps as one that has no friends to comfort her. Jerusalem was a thriving, bustling city. Her streets were full of people and her air full of cries of merchants hoping to sell their wares. Pilgrims from many other nations came by the tens of thousands for the great pilgrimage festivals, and priests kept the sacrificial fires burning at the temple. And now she weeps because her neighbors, who were her former allies, have all abandoned her. Some have even turned on her, joining Babylon's savage attack. To explain a little about this geographical politics that happened at the time, this was what my research tells me. In the northern kingdom of Israel had long since been destroyed. The southern kingdom of Judah was being ruled by the descendants of the house of King David. Assyria and Babylonia were located in Mesopotamia, the area of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where Iraq is located today, some 400-500 miles northeast of Israel. Babylonia, and that's southern Mesopotamia, which has surpassed Assyria, which is northern Mesopotamia, as a dominant Mesopotamian power. So in 605 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylonia defeated Egypt at Carchemish, thereby establishing Babylonia as this region's reigning superpower. In 598 BC, Nebuchadnezzar responded to a rebellion in Judah by laying siege to Jerusalem, forcing Jerusalem's most prominent citizens into exile in Babylonia, and carrying off all of the treasures of the temple of God. In 587 BC, Nebuchadnezzar responded to a rebellion by Zedekiah of Judah by, again, laying siege to Jerusalem. This time he destroyed the city and brutally killed many of its inhabitants. He took most of the rest to Babylon and left behind only the poorest. The book of Lamentations was certainly written during that Babylonian exile, which lasted from 587 BC to 539 BC. That's 48 years until Cyrus of Persia freed those exiles. In that patriarchal Hebrew culture, widows are vulnerable. Widows have very few rights and only marginal ways to make a living. While Jewish law has provisions to protect widows with food and shelter, widows often find themselves reduced to desperate circumstances financially and are subject to exploitation. We all know what that means. The point here is that Jerusalem, a formerly great city, a princess among cities, has become like a lowly widow that sits quiet, desolate, and almost deserted. She is a vessel of Babylonia, and she no longer has control over her own future. Verse 2 reads, "She wept bitterly in the night, and her tears are now on her cheeks." And then verse 4 reads that her virgins are afflicted. Thank God times have changed a little bit. But living in that macho-led society, young women are treated like property. They know that they must find themselves a husband if they have any kind of life. They are dependent on husbands for financial support, as well as affection and procreation. In Jerusalem, the young girls are grieving because their prospects of marriage are hopelessly dim. They spend their years lamenting as their adversaries prosper. For Yahweh has afflicted her for the multitude of her transgressions. Her young children are gone into captivity before the adversary. Her adversaries have become her masters. Now, this verse in Lamentations harkens back to Deuteronomy 28, when Yahweh outlined a series of blessings that the people of Israel would enjoy if they proved themselves faithful, including a series of curses that they would experience if they proved themselves unfaithful. Note that there are many more verses of curses than of blessings. Yahweh has given these people fair warning of the consequences of infidelity. But of course, these things have come to pass. The Babylonians have become the rulers, and the people of Judah and Jerusalem have become the subjects. Yahweh was unable to protect the people of Judah and Jerusalem. It is indeed divine justice visited upon an unfaithful people. They are once again slaves as they were once slaves in Egypt. Her princes are become like stags that find no pasture. They are gone without strength before the pursuer. Her princes have become like harts. Yeah, just remember that. So this is just such a dark passage. It's really difficult sometimes to preach from, but I found something to lighten things up a little bit. I found a positive message about lamenting from philosopher Professor Bruce McGraw, who recently wrote an interesting online article about finding his true self and having this on and off absurd good feeling about his future. It was about how occasionally, out of the blue, he is hit with this overwhelming good feeling. Professor McGraw writes, "Last night I decided, yes, I am depressed, despairing, and I'm a negative person. That's exactly how I feel, and that's who I am. It might not be great, but at least it's something solid by which I can define myself. And then, in the morning, I felt great. Why?" he says. Then, for whatever reason, he woke up in the morning feeling great. "I felt at peace with myself and with the world. My body felt healthy and energetic, and I felt in sync with everything." So in closing, the professor's hope that was the good feeling continues to stay with him. In times of distress, it is wonderful to be comforted by yourself or someone who loves us. When we are afraid, it is wonderful to have our loved ones take us into their arms and reassure us with a hug. When we feel unsure of ourselves, it is wonderful to have someone tell us that they love us. However, a person who chases many lovers will soon find out that the fragmented life that grows out of multiple relationships provides more tension than comfort. When we have a problem, it is wonderful to have someone who loves us say, "How can I help?" Or, "Don't worry about that. Things are going to be okay. I'll take care of it." But Jerusalem has found that her pagan gods have no power to help, no comfort to offer. They're just idols, sticks and stones, worthless and powerless. So please remember, when the pursuer is at your back and you are exhausted, it can look like the battle is all but over, but don't give up on God. That's when you can do the right thing and get broken before God. Know that our struggles shape, form, and mold us into being better vessels for God. And God will change the whole scheme of things, and you will become the pursuer that will have, you will become the pursuer that would have the pursuer powerless against you and your victories. Go with God and create the change that you wish to see in the world. May it be so.
It's a time in our service where we collect an offering. To those attending MCC Boston through our YouTube page, you too can participate by going to our website at mccboston.org and clicking on the donate button there for that purpose. Thank you for being a part of our church family. Members and friends of MCC Boston, if you search the internet under MCC churches, one of the shortest descriptions you'll find is the following statement. Metropolitan Community Churches, founded in 1968, is a human rights movement and ministry operating as a Christian denomination in 22 countries around the world. MCC is an international advocate for vulnerable people in places where religious orthodoxy, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia can result in violence and death. MCC's promise is stated in its tagline, "Tearing down walls, building up hope." I find this statement so profound that it alone propels me to support UFMCC and MCC Boston. I hope you agree. So this week, continue to keep UFMCC and MCC Boston in your prayers. For now, as the basket is presented, please give as you are able, and may God continue to bless you and MCC Boston. Thank you.